Israel and Hamas have agreed to expedite the first phase of the hostage deal. How many hostages are going to be released? What has Israel agreed to in return? What does this mean for the future of the deal? I'm Alon Burstein. Let's dive in. On Tuesday, February 18th, Israel and Hamas agreed to expedite the timetable of the first phase of the hostage deal. This change relates to the release of both live and dead hostages that are included in the first phase of the deal, i.e. we're talking about 14 out of the 73 hostages still in captivity. Of these 14, 6 are alive and the rest are bodies of hostages that are going to be returned. According to the new arrangement, rather than 3 live hostages being released on Saturday and 3 more being released on March 1st, which is the last day of Phase 1, all 6 live hostages are going to be released on Saturday, February 22nd. In exchange, Israel is going to release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. These include 47 prisoners who were released in the Gilad Shalit deal of 2011 but since were rearrested. It also includes a lot of quote-unquote heavy Palestinian prisoners, that is, those prisoners who are serving life sentences in Israeli jails. With regards to the 8 bodies of hostages, 4 of them are going to be returned on Thursday, February 20th, and another 4 will be returned the following Thursday, February 27th. In its announcement, Hamas stated that among the 4 bodies that will be returned on February 20th are included the 2 Bibas children. I remind everyone that Hamas had stated previously that they had been killed in an IDF airstrike over a year ago. In exchange for the return of the hostages' bodies, Israel is going to release all Palestinian prisoners who are women and children under the age of 19 who were arrested in the Gaza Strip since the war began. The deal stipulates that the Palestinian children under the age of 19 will be released so long as they are not militants. However, the deal does not elaborate on how exactly this is defined, i.e. who is defined as a militant and who is not. In exchange for these changes, Israel has agreed to expedite and carry out 3 things that it was obligated to do in the initial agreement between the sides, each of which has been delayed until now. The first is the entrance of mobile homes into the Gaza Strip, which are supposed to serve as temporary housing for the millions of internally displaced people who are returning to northern Gaza. In the original agreement, Israel was supposed to enable the entrance of 60,000 such mobile homes. However, the deal did not stipulate when this would happen, and none have entered until now. A second element that Israel has agreed to expedite is the entrance of heavy industrial equipment. This includes both tractors and bulldozers that are aimed at clearing the rubbles off the Straits of Gaza. Almost all such equipment in the Gaza Strip had been destroyed during the war, with the IDF stating that beyond its industrial use, such equipment was used in the October 7th attack, as well as in order for Hamas to fortify its defenses and build tunnels. Today, Hamas made several public announcements that this equipment is going to enter the Gaza Strip immediately as part of this new arrangement, while in Israel it was repeatedly stated that the equipment will be transferred gradually after inspection, and Prime Minister Netanyahu's spokesperson went even further, stating that there is no such agreement on the entrance of mobile homes or industrial equipment. Beyond these 2 elements, however, the third thing that Hamas demanded as part of this new timetable is an immediate expediting and initiation of negotiations on Phase 2 of the agreement. As a reminder, Phase 2 of the deal includes only 1 article stating that the sides will, and I quote, announce restoration of sustainable calm, i.e. cessation of military operations and hostilities permanently, and the commencement of sustainable calm prior to the exchange of hostages and prisoners between the 2 sides, all remaining Israeli hostages who are living men, civilian and soldiers, in exchange for a number of prisoners in Israeli prisons and detention centers, and the complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip, end quote. This phase is also supposed to be 42 days, a 6-week phase, during which time there will be the complete IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and the release of all living hostages in exchange for an amount of Palestinian prisoners. The main issue to be negotiating up until now has been the quote-unquote exchange rate, i.e. how many Palestinian prisoners will be released in exchange for each Israeli hostage. According to the terms of the initial deal, this phase is supposed to then lead to Phase 3, which is a long-term reconstruction of the Gaza Strip and complete removal of the siege on Gaza. One of the important things to note, however, when it comes to progressing from Phase 1 to Phase 2, is that the deal is deliberately ambiguous with regards to the question of who will govern the Gaza Strip during these 2 phases, i.e. Phase 2 and Phase 3, and who will oversee the reconstruction and, so to speak, Gaza's future. According to the initial deal between the sides, negotiations over the implementation of Phase 2 were supposed to begin on day 16 of Phase 1, i.e. already on February 3rd, and were destined to be concluded by the end of Week 5, i.e. by the end of this current week. In practice, however, Israel had not authorized this negotiating team to Qatar or to Egypt to begin negotiations on Phase 2, and while there's been conflicting reports about whether negotiations might have started in the back channel or might not have, what is clear is that they have not progressed until now. As part of the new negotiated timetable, Israel has agreed to begin negotiations on Phase 2. However, there's conflicting reports if those negotiations are going to start immediately or as of next week. More importantly, however, it was announced later in the day that Israel has added 3 new terms to these negotiations, stating that Phase 2 must include the complete demilitarization of Gaza, i.e. Hamas disarming itself in the Gaza Strip, Hamas having no more presence in the Gaza Strip, i.e. relating to its governing capabilities, and that the Palestinian Authority is not going to be part of the governing apparatus in the Gaza Strip. With regards to these demands, Hamas has in the past insisted that it will remain the sole governing body in Gaza. However, in the past weeks, Hamas has already eased these terms, stating that it will be willing to not have an official role in governing the Gaza Strip, and that as long as this role is either a Palestinian body or a broader Arab governing committee. The movement also repeatedly stated that it is willing to initiate negotiations and complete the transition from Phase 1 to Phase 2. However, it outright rejected Israel's demands for demilitarization or Hamas withdrawing from the Strip. Today, Hamas put out a statement stating that these demands are psychological warfare and that they will not be accepted in any resolution with regards to Gaza's future. So with this new timetable and the upcoming release of hostages, where do things stand right now with regards to Phase 2? Officially, negotiations over Phase 2 are supposed to start, and again, there's conflicting reports about whether it's immediately or at the beginning of next week. Qatar and Egypt are applying a lot of pressure on Hamas to move forward on Phase 2, and the U.S. in turn is also applying great pressure on Israel to move forward on Phase 2. U.S. President Trump's special envoy to the region, Steve Witkoff, stated yesterday that Trump would like to see Phase 2 of the deal implemented fully. In addition, it's also important to note that according to the terms of the deal, the ceasefire that is currently in effect in Phase 1 is supposed to continue and be automatically extended as long as negotiations over Phase 2 are ongoing. It's also important to note that Israel is supposed to begin its withdrawal from the Philadelphia corridor, that is the border between Gaza and Egypt, in the last day of Phase 1, i.e. on day 42, and it's also supposed to complete it by day 50, i.e. within 8 days of the initiation of that withdrawal. Again, all that is supposed to happen at the end of Phase 1 and leading into Phase 2. Alongside this, however, the ambiguity with regards to who will govern the Gaza Strip during these phases makes it somewhat unlikely, I'll say, that the sides are going to reach an agreement within the next week and a half. Israel has also announced today that the configuration of its negotiating team is going to be changed, with senior Israeli officials, which is usually a code name for Prime Minister Netanyahu, stating that the negotiations on Phase 2 are going to be seen as a state matter rather than a security matter, since unlike in Phase 1, Phase 2 relates to a decision to end the war, which should be seen as a political decision rather than just a security decision. Therefore, according to the source, Israel's negotiating team will no longer include the head of the Israeli Shabak, Ronen Bar, or the head of the Israeli Mossad, Dedi Barnea. These are two figures that are in charge of Israel's different security apparatuses that have also been very instrumental in moving the different phases of the deal forward. In turn, the team is going to be headed by Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, who is currently Netanyahu's closest confidant and will be directed by Netanyahu himself. While this also may have an impact on slowing down the possible progression and reaching agreements on Phase 2, I'm also going to say that the fact that now Netanyahu is making public that he is the one that's solely directing the negotiating team may also mean that the team is going to be more susceptible to international political pressures, such as, for example, if U.S. President Trump does in fact throw his weight behind seeing Israel committed and implementing Phase 2, even though this somewhat contradicts Trump's plan for the Gaza Strip. This may have more weight in the negotiations than previously when it was seen more as a security matter. Again, that's speculation on my part. All we know is that with this expedited timetable, we are expected to see the faster return of some of the hostages from Phase 1, and we're supposed to see the initiation of negotiations on Phase 2. The most important things to be looking at towards the end of the month as Phase 1 ends is if those negotiations do in fact get started and how fast they progress. Is Israel going to withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor? It's also very important to note that Phase 1 is due to end on March 1st, which coincides with the initiation of the month of Ramadan. This is the holiest month in Islam, and in the past has often been a time when there is heightened security issues and escalations between Israel and different Palestinian factions. All that remains to be seen. We'll see what happens towards the end of the month. That is my highlight on the current developments in the Israel-Hamas war and the new timetable that has been negotiated between the sides. If you find these highlights informative, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when they come out. If you know anyone who would benefit from them, please feel free to pass them along to anyone else. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'm Alon Burstein. I'm a visiting assistant professor and an Israel Institute fellow in the Department of Political Science at Tufts University. Thanks for watching.